Hello everybody, I'm back with another video for you today, and this time we're going to be looking at a bunch of new cards that have got revealed, and also two whole leaders, which I've got to say are looking very, very cool. We'll talk about them in just a second, but first, there's a few cards been revealed on the Gwent YouTube channel, as well as by content creators, so let's just jump into those. The first here is Blood Totem. As you can see, it's 10 provisions, Galaga card, deploy effect of spawn a Svalbard fanatic on both sides of this card, and an order effect of damage adjacent units by 2. Of course, when the fanatic is damaged by 2, it does trigger its berserk effect, and you get a bear abomination, which is 5 strength. So, a really cool self-contained artifact, but with a deploy effect, and I really like the direction they're going with artifacts in this patch. For the most part, a lot of them have deploy effects. They're having immediate value on the board, which is meaning if artifact removal is in play, against things like Portal, against things like this, the Hayen Gaedeth sword or whatever it's called. If you're playing artifact removal, it's not too devastating for the person playing artifacts, and vice versa. If you don't have artifact removal, it's not too bad if they're playing this kind of artifact, because they're getting the value on it. It's fair value, it's a 10 for 10, potentially, although you can maybe even think about using this damage adjacent units for other things, like, I don't know, maybe you have a guy on the board that's already a little bit damaged and you can trigger the berserk on him. That's a bit niche, whatever. Pretty much this is just a 10 for 10, right? And of course, adjacent units being damaged, maybe that synergizes with cards you're running in a self-wounding archetype, like the Haymay Protector or whatever it's called. Gets boosted when your adjacent guys get damaged. So, of course, a bit of self-wound synergy there, and just I think a very good card. This seems like it will be pretty damn good. A little bit vulnerable to orcs, I guess, if you're running all of the Svalbard Fanatics and this card. They can maybe orcs you and kind of shut that down if you play this before the other Fanatics, but that's kind of not even really a worry. Pretty much just seems like a good card, and I love the way that it's an artifact, it's not binary, and it's incentivizing that archetype that, of course, is coming with the expansion. Alright, what's the next card we have here? It is Milton. Very cool animation on this card as well, look at that. Oh, beautiful. Anyway, it is a Nilfgaard card, of course, synergizing with Palmerin, which we've already seen. I think he was giving adjacent allies shields, with a death blow effect similar to Milton. I think it's 2 damage though, the deploy, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that. Anyway, Milton is 8 provisions, 5 strength, the same as Palmerin, and he damages an enemy unit by 1, and if he kills a unit with that, damage adjacent units by 2. So you can potentially get a lot of value from this. This could be a 10 for 8. I'm going to say quite a lot of the time. Particularly if you have Palmerin in hand, obviously, then you don't have to get the death blow off. You can just play the card and it'll work without killing anything. So that seems pretty good. Another one of these card combos that work together in the same way Orc, Seret, Letho and whatnot do. So that seems to be kind of an identity that Nilfgaard has. They kind of reveal a bit of their hand when they play one of these cards. They show you that maybe they have Palmerin in hand, and they get a bit of a stronger effect at the cost of that information that they give to you. So I am a fan kind of this card design. It's pretty interesting. It definitely leads to some situations where you can maybe outplay your opponent based on that information you have. You can, play around the card they have, and it seems fair for both parties in some way. Pretty powerful effect, but information is given up. Anyway, seems quite strong, right? 10 for 8, and then presumably I think Palmerin is a 7 for 8 in that case. Of course, you have the flexibility. You can give allies shields if you want to with Palmerin instead of getting that synergy from Milton. So, yeah, potentially even more than a 7 for 8, because they both have death blow effects. So even if you don't have, even if you play one from hand, get the not needing the Death Wish ability off, then you can basically play the second one, actually use the death blow, and then maybe get both of their proper effects off, right? You can get both the 2 adjacent unit damage and the shields off. If you're able to do that, that's going to be worth quite a lot of points, I imagine, depending on how good the shield actually ends up being. But yeah, it seems like quite a competent pair of cards. I imagine these will see play very likely. Just the fact that you can get a 10 for 8 and a 7 for 8, I mean, that just works, right? 10 plus 7, 17 for, what, 16 provisions? That's a great amount of points for provisions that you can get there. So, pretty sure this will see play, and pretty cool effect. I do like these cards that work together. It's pretty cool and thematic. Alright, what do we got next? We've got, of course, Detlef, Higher Vampire. And this guy is a monster card, of course. 10 provisions, 5 strength, Death Wish. Summon this unit from the graveyard to the same row. This unit's ability is limited to 3 uses and doesn't refresh when it leaves the battlefield. So, pretty much, it's like a Ruahin. They said in the video here, it's like a Ruahin, but it will resurrect immediately. So if you are able to consume multiple times in a turn, which you often are with things like Kairon, Babagazi, etc., then you can potentially eat this multiple times if it sticks on the board for 1 turn. It is still, of course, going to be vulnerable to things like lock. In fact, that's probably the only thing it will be vulnerable to. Luckily, it's 5 strength, so it's avoiding the kind of death blow and banish effects that we're getting in the expansion with Regis Bloodlust and the bomb, whatever it's called, that does that. So I'm excited for this card, honestly. It makes stuff like Kairon a lot more powerful as a finisher. Maybe you play it as just a 2-card combo in some decks, because if you make this work, it's potentially, what, 20 points? That's actually ridiculous for 10 provisions. So, I mean, yeah, maybe if you're playing Kairon, okay, it's 4 for 9, so really what you're getting is 24 for 19, but that's still really insane as finisher value. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if this was played at some point, maybe with Kairon, maybe just with Cyclopses for nutty amounts of points, you know, Cyclopses, Babagazis, whatever. Little bit vulnerable to lock, but I don't think that's too much of an issue, especially when there's some purification available, you know, in the neutrals, as we've seen with things like Pella. Maybe you don't play that. I don't know how good that card will be, but yeah, I think this looks very promising, and it's kind of unassuming in how strong I think it will be. I think it looks very good, actually, after thinking about it. Anyway, let's go to the next, shall we? What do we have? We have Oriana. Another awesome monster card. Honestly, all the cards here are just so... they're really, really, really nice. Awesome design, and seem like they'll see play as well, from what I can tell. So what do we got here? 9 provisions, 4 strength, Vampire, which is also important. Detlef, Higher Vampire, was also a vampire, obviously. Works with things like the Crimson Curse card, of course. So that might also be quite a powerful way to play. You go for the long round with the Blood Moon and the vampires and whatnot. I'm sure that will be somewhat viable. Anyway, yeah, 4 strength, 9 provisions, deploy given enemy unit bleeding with a duration equal to the number of allied vampires. And ranged, if you're on ranged row with this, you get, you boost self by the number of bleeding enemy units every allied turn. That's pretty crazy if you're able to set up the bleeding and have that prolonged, because you can get, I mean, a lot of value potentially, right? 2 bleeding units, you're getting 2 every turn. That's pretty crazy. 3 bleeding units, oh man. The thing is, that's going to be quite hard to achieve because, I mean, maybe not, but either you have to play this kind of vulnerable, right? You have to play it early on and then go bleed, 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 and she'll start going boop, boop, boop. Or you play it later on, you get a higher bleeding sort of value, because you have more allied vampires on the board. That's probably the way you're going to have to do this. You play a couple of vampires, maybe you make them bleed a little bit, then you slam Oriana, she gives bleeding for a long time, you know, maybe 3-4 turns, whatever, and then getting those boosts as well, maybe starting at 2 boosts per turn, maybe it goes up to 3-4, like, in theory this could be absolutely nuts, particularly if you use it with stuff like Watchman, maybe give it a shield, or just immunize it with Avalak or anything like that. So I'm seeing this be... or Eridan as well. Eridan's another thing that could abuse this pretty nicely. Just another one of these kind of... if it gets immune, this card could be absolutely nuts. Otherwise, it's probably fair. I mean, you can probably even get maybe close to 9 value. If you think about it, she comes down as a 5 naturally, right? Because you're giving an enemy bleeding at the end of the turn, she already gets boosted. So she's pretty much already a 5. That means you need to hit maybe 2 or 3 bleeding with it. So you need 2 or 3 vampires. You need the enemies to bleed for like maybe 1 other enemy bleeding unit, and then you're like there on value. So honestly, this might be very good. I'm not sure how good the other bleeding cards will actually end up being. If they're not good enough to put in a deck, you know, maybe they lose you too much tempo from playing the bleeding effect, or maybe it just gets purified a lot of the time or whatever. If that is the case, then Oriana probably won't be that good, but this card seems very promising, and I can see it being abused in a lot of ways, which will be very fun to experiment with as well. Alright, next up we have Sienna. This is a neutral card, 12 provisions, 3 strength, order effective. Repeat the deploy ability of the next unit you play during this turn. So, letting you double up on that deploy of one time, pretty much. Pretty powerful effect. Of course, it is an expensive card. 12, you know, for 3. If this dies, that is really bad news. So, pretty much the only way you're going to be playing this, I imagine, is with Avalak, you know, with shield mechanic of some kind, or with Queen Calanth, as we'll get onto that with Natalis, as was said by Austria. I don't know if that will actually be good. Maybe it will be. Natalis is actually kind of potentially a sleeper good card, giving zeal to your units, and he's quite hard to remove, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. But there's potential here. I would say this will only be good if it's abused by giving it immunity. I mean, you could even play like an Eridan style finisher with this. Maybe you play like this with Eridan, you immunize it in round 3, and then the next card you play, I don't know, it's whatever, some kind of really powerful deploy that you can throw in the monster deck or whatever. Wait, I'm thinking of, oh man, think about this. You could have like, you could play Sienna, Eridan it, and then you could eat like 2 units with Osril or something, right? Because it's a deploy effect. That would be crazy. That would be a really cool finisher. Would it actually get you enough value? That's the question, because the deploy effect that you basically are getting from the Sienna, right, on the order needs to be worth about 9 points for it to be actually good. So you need a 9-point deploy. I think that's going to be hard to achieve. There might be a couple of niche things that can do that, like Vernon Roach, as was said in this video. The Vernon Roach deploy effect can probably get 9. Maybe a Geralt if they have multiple big units. I think it's probably too conditional to ever really be mainstream, other than in maybe Northern Realms with Queen Calanth, but I'm not sure about that. That's a tricky one to predict. But cool ability nonetheless. Yeah, I think it was a bit too abusable when it wasn't an order and it was just a consistent ability, but now it's probably a bit too conditional, I think, to be actually mainstream strong, but we'll see about that. Next up is Lady of the Lake. This is the complete opposite to Sienna in terms of how much I think it will be played. Probably a lot is the answer. This card seems very, very powerful. 7 strength, 7 provisions, 4 strength, neutral card, so anyone can play this. It has shield, and it has an order effect of give an allied unit a shield, so pretty much a difficult to remove shield giver, which obviously is going to be quite strong, I think. You know, there's some things that can deal with this, like maybe you have a leader that can ping units, maybe Crack or Bruver or Ithne, or Bran or whatever, even. Maybe you can ping this unit with an order unit on board and then kill it. So having the shield doesn't make it completely immune, of course. You can still do a little bit of damage from an order effect or whatever, and then hit it with a 4 damage. You can lock it still. But it's definitely going to be something that is great for decks with strong engines. If you're playing like a Meve deck with a ton of engines in it, maybe you throw this in because it's going to protect your valuable engine, or at the very least draw a lot of removal from the opponent, which they might want to use on your other engines. Seems very promising. I would probably throw this in a lot of decks in the current meta. If you were able to do that, you could abuse a lot of cards and just make them very hard to deal with. But as I said, you know, shield doesn't make something impervious. You can still lock it. You can still damage it, potentially, and then damage it again if you have orders on the board or whatever. So, seems pretty promising. You only need to get 3 value from this. So if they're damaging the shields for 3 points worth of damage, then you've got your value on that card, even if it doesn't, you know, protect the unit, if it dies or whatever. You've still got some value there potentially. So I anticipate this being pretty good, but we'll see. Maybe there's going to be some ways to counter shield that, you know, will become pretty mainstream. Who knows? Purifications and whatnot. There's a couple of tech cards like the bombs and everything that you could play to deal with this stuff. So we'll see. But it's very interesting nonetheless. All right. We next have Svalbard, new leader for Galaga. I must say I'm very excited about this one. He looks really awesome. 16 provisions for this leader, which is, you know, more than most of the Galaga leaders, I want to say, at the moment. And an order effect of damage an allied unit by 1, 5 charges, and once all the charges have been exhausted, you can spawn a bear abomination and summon it to an allied row. So, very interesting ability. I like the kind of 2 aspects to this. You have a bit of finisher value with the bear abomination that you can spawn, and you're able to, of course, synergize with your self-wounding stuff, maybe early in the game with things like Shield Maidens, maybe with your Svalblood Fanatics if it's hard to proc them or whatever, with any other Berserk guys that you might have. How good will this be? I'm not sure. It's potentially a very bad leader sometimes if you don't have a Berserk guy to be damaging, if you don't have the self-wound synergy on board when you want to be using these procs, right? And if you're damaging an allied unit in round 3 and you don't have Berserk, to get the Bear Abomination, it's only going to be worth, 4 points maybe to actually make that work. I can foresee this having 5 charges being kind of awkward sometimes. Maybe you don't want to use them early on, or you're forced to, or whatever. I don't know. But it's a very cool ability. I don't know if it will be good for self-wounding. Maybe it will be. Maybe it will be too hard to otherwise proc Berserk on the units. But I'm really interested to see how good it will be either way. Hard for me to say how strong it will be. I think it will be a bit more awkward than strong, but I might be wrong about that. I'd be happy to be wrong about that. Alright, what's the next leader? We have Calanth for Northern Realms, and this one is pretty interesting. It has a one turn effect, 14 provision card, 1 turn effect, order effect. Play a Northern Realms faction card from your hand and then draw a card. So this is interesting. This is another one-time effect like Calvit, like Dana, which was revealed yesterday. I think it will be a lot better than Dana, just because Northern Realms has a lot more engines, it has a lot more very high potential value cards that you want to play, that also synergize with going off on the same turn. Think things like Hubert. That could potentially be nuts with this, right? That's one that comes off the top of the head. There are potential other synergies with just playing a shield giver and an engine at the same time. That seems very powerful. Or maybe you just slam an Okvist and then you shield it, or you play a Selkirk and you shield it, or you play another dual unit. We'll talk about another one that's been revealed in a second. So I do see the potential of this leader being a lot higher than with Calvi and with Dana, just because Northern Realms has way more cards that really work with that kind of ability and can combo effectively off of it. So 14 provisions isn't great, but it does give a lot of finisher value, and right now there's not really a leader in Northern Realms that does that, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if this became kind of the mainstream pick for Northern Realms as a leader, just because typically the leaders that are very good, not always, but you're thinking things that can give a lot of immediate value a lot of the time, right? That being said, I mean, Gernakor is pretty strong, and Bran and whatnot. Might not be true, but definitely the combo potential is there. We'll be interested to see the different card combos you pull off with this. I think Hubert will be very nice with this, potentially. I guess then again, it doesn't really work that easily, does it? Because you have to play the Northern Realms card and then get another card into your hands, so you won't be able to do it as your last play. So maybe not with Hubert, but there are other things, Dijkstra. Basically, if this will be good, I think it will be because it's being abused to combo with something in some way. Otherwise, I don't think it will be that good, actually, because it's still got that downside of getting a card from your deck, a random card late in the game. That's never going to really be good news for you, because, of course, your deck will be quite bad at the end of the game, usually. Interesting effect, though. I think it will have more potential than the other thinning guys, but maybe it will be good. Maybe I expect it to be broken at some point with some card combo, but apart from that, maybe it won't be good, actually. Alright, cool. I do believe that is all the cards shown. We've been shown the models as well. I love the Calanth model, it's so good. Oh man, actually looks so good. I don't know what about it, just looks so clean and crisp. The Svalblood one is also pretty cool, we can check that. There he is. Looking like an absolute abomination. Alright, so that's all the cards that were revealed here in this video. I'll of course talk about ones that I missed from a day or two ago. We have a few new ones here. I do think was it only 2? I think there's been more, but whatever. This is one I really wanted to talk about. Prince and Says. It's a Northern Realms card. 10 provisions, 4 strength, formation, and order. Damage an enemy unit by 4 if Prince and Says is boosted. Duel an enemy instead. I love this so much. The formation is allowing this card to be super flexible. You can either go for the boost on the ranged row or the zeal to, of course, do the damage or the duel immediately. Obviously, things like Meave can combo very well with this. You play this, you play Meave, you effectively have a Selkirk with Zeal, which is incredible for only 1 provision more. You're going to be able to get basically 9/10 value from this. And if you have a shield giver on the board, maybe the guy, what's he called? I don't know, the guy that gives shield, you know, that has formation as well. You have him on the board, you can play this, you can give it Zeal, you can shield him potentially, and get some immediate shielded dual value, which I think that would be insane, honestly, as a combo that you can pull off. And that's something worth noting. Maybe with Calanth you can do that. In fact, you will be able to do that, right? You can play the shield giving card, give that card Zeal, and you can also play Calanth on the same turn. Play this, give it shield, boom, do like the mightiest of duels. So that was very powerful. Like, if you give this a shield, you're effectively doubling the amount of damage it can do, right? Yeah, so that's kind of incredible. You'll be able to kill like an 8-point unit or whatever with this, get a lot of value. So definitely something to watch out for there. I do just love the flexibility of this. Of course, if you have boost givers on board as well, things like maybe Kedwenny Sergeant, you can buff this up and make sure you get a bit of extra dual value with that Zeal as well. Selkirk is just a bit vulnerable. He can be moved, he can be damaged, you know, he can be locked or whatever. And this guy, giving him Zeal is obviously going to make that a lot less worrisome, and you can even play him on the ranged row and not be worrying about movement and whatnot. If you want to go for the extra value, in some situations you will. Okay, next one is Wild Karl. This is a 9 provision card, 5 strength, berserk, transform into a champion of Svalbard Skellige card, and kind of the frightener for Skellige, right? You get a 12-point bear. This is the champion of Svalbard when you proc this berserk effect. So obviously this is going to work pretty well with Svalbard the leader, and the thematic there is so awesome, guys. It's like this guy's coming down, he's then getting like eaten by bears because Svalbard is like commanding the bears to like eat him, and then he turns into this Svalbard champion. You know what I'm saying? It's like thematically it's so awesome, and it's really cool to see the leader working with all the bear abominations and the fanatics, and magnifique. It really looks great. Even if it won't be competitive, which I have a feeling it might be. Maybe not Svalbard himself, but who knows. Definitely proccing this will be very good for you. Dealing 3 damage to him will give you a 12 strength unit. So, I mean, even if, basically, if you're wasting the damage, this is maybe not so good, of course, but if you're not wasting the damage, if you're just doing that naturally from the light longship, the cultist or whatever it's called, and other effects, maybe you use that Svalbard. And in fact, to be honest, Svalbard might be good just because you have a lot of these really high powered potential berserk cards. You could use this with things like Canute the Callous or whatever he's called as well, so that's potentially good. I think this card will be good. It just gets you a ton of points. There's also things you can do with this. You can maybe renew it. You can maybe play Hjalmar and lob it at the enemy from the graveyard or whatever. So, oh, and it also has an order effect. I didn't even notice that. The order effect is destroy an allied unit, then heal itself. So this guy's also kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say it's immune to damage, but there's something going on there with self-wounding synergy. If you're able to damage your own guy and get the bleeding on the opponents, I think there's cards that do that, like the Marauder. Maybe you damage him and then you destroy a weak ally and then heal him back up. I'm not sure how good that ability will be. It probably won't matter most of the time, but it does mean that if they're hitting it with like a big damage effect, then their damage is often going to be wasted in some capacity. So that's a little bit of a bonus. Basically, I think this card is going to be quite good, I think. Whenever you're able to proc it, you're just going to get a lot of value and even potential to kind of abuse this 12-point guy in your graveyard. Wouldn't be surprised if that was a thing that saw play. Maybe you play Svalbard, this guy, and renew, and you have just a 12-point finisher. I don't know if that would be good, but it's worth keeping in mind. Anyway, I think there's a couple more cards. We can go and look if there's any that I've missed. I should be able to see. Relatively easy. I think I talked about Ducal Guard. Traveling Merchant, yeah, I think I've talked about all the rest. I think there's a couple more on Reddit, but whatever. We'll talk about them at some other stage, I suppose. Yeah, that's all the new cards. Fantastic. I gotta say, some of the factions are looking very awesome. I'm super pumped and excited to play a lot of the new stuff. Northern Realms especially, guys. I think Northern Realms will maybe have its day now with the expansion. Galaga's looking pretty hot as well. Monsters is... I mean, what is there to say? Anyway, that'll be me done for today. There'll be new leader spotlights, I imagine, coming out very soon for the new leaders. So stay tuned for videos on those, of course. Subscribe if you'd like to see them. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.